Number 10. Aztec Cannibals. Excavations from the small Aztec town of Ticoac have revealed some true horrors from the ancient world. According to evidence, Spanish conquistadors butchered around a dozen women and their children in this small Aztec town. Why did they do such a terrible thing? It was for revenge. Something that happened a few months earlier when the inhabitants of the town captured a detachment of Spaniards and devoured them. Yeah, they ate them. This happened in the year 1520. The residents of the town captured a pretty sizable convoy, about 15 male Spaniards, 50 women, 10 children, and a collection of soldiers from Cuba and Africa. There were also about 350 allied indigenous with the Spaniards. In total, around 500 people were captured. Over the next few months after being captured, each and every person was sacrificed and eaten. Conquistador Hernan Cortez heard about the atrocity and ordered the town destroyed for vengeance. 600 years later, archaeologists discovered evidence that the townsfolk knew revenge was coming and they got rid of the Spaniards' bones to try and destroy the evidence. I guess they didn't hide the evidence very well, though. Excavations found chopped up remains, the ruins of burned temples, decapitated statues, and all the other horrifying remnants of both cannibalism and the revenge attack. This gave archaeologists a pretty clear and gruesome picture of what happened. Number 9. Littlemore Priory. There are some places in the world where you would honestly expect nothing to go wrong. One of them is a holy place, where people like nuns reside. For Littlemore Priory in the English county of Oxfordshire, this seemed to be the case. All sorts of rather odd and disturbing rumors seemed to swirl around the place, despite its holy veneer. Rumors of violence. What's more, these stories didn't just grow over time, they lasted for 5 centuries. What exactly was going on here? In 2015, archaeologists took a closer look at the place and they found some very unholy things going on. You see, the lead nun was named Catherine Wells, and she had a baby with one of the priests, which was quite frowned upon. She used her power to sell and pawn everything of value within her grasp so that she could have money to take care of the baby. And she punished all the nuns who tried to stop her. She would beat them and put them in the stocks, sometimes for a month at a time. Eventually, she was caught by a bishop of Lincoln and relieved of her duties. But a year later, when the bishop came back, he discovered the abuse never stopped. Then, the other nuns followed her example, and more unholy acts continued until finally the priory was shut down. So fast forward to 2015, and there were 90 bodies uncovered in the place, one of whom was not only buried face down, which was the mark of either a witch or a sinful woman in those times, but she was also buried with a child. Who that woman was and how and why she ended up that way was never fully discovered, but some believe it may be the final resting place of Catherine Wells. Number 8. Toothy Tumor. Finding a body is creepy enough, especially when it's an older one and you wonder about their final moments. But it's even creepier when you find a body that has something in it that you can't immediately identify. Such was the case when a 1600-year-old Roman woman's body was found, and within her pelvis was a tumor that had teeth in it. Creepy and disgusting. Wouldn't you agree? The body itself was found in a necropolis in Spain, and you can only imagine what the archaeologists thought when they saw that mass. The woman in question had a condition known today as ovarian teratoma, which, as its name indicates, occurs in the ovaries. The word teratoma comes from Greek words teres and onkoma, which translate to monster and swelling, respectively. Which would have been an accurate thing to call it back then, as seeing something like that in that area of the body would have appeared monstrous, no doubt. Ovarian teratomas are bizarre, but benign tumors, wrote lead researcher Nura Amrantado after the discovery was made. The tumors come from germ cells, which form human eggs and create hair, teeth, and bone, among other structures. This tumor within the woman was the first of its kind found in an ancient body, so while creepy, it was a history maker in a very bizarre way. Number 7. The Telltale Heart. Allow me to tell you the tale of Louise de Quengo, aka the Lady of Briefalac. She outlived her husband, and when she died 7 years later, she was buried in 1656, and she decided to have a very specific part of her husband buried along with her, his literal heart. Yeah, for real. He was a knight, and as part of a ritual, his heart was removed, put into an urn, and buried with Louise when she passed. It was common during that time period to be buried with the heart of a wife or a husband. Fatima Zora Mocrane, a radiologist at Ranquil Hospital at the University Hospital of Toulouse in France, said in a statement, "It's a very romantic aspect to the burials." That's certainly one way to frame this event. What's kind of creepy, though, was that not unlike other mummification practices, the hearts themselves were in really good condition, despite being hundreds of years old, to the extent that they could be examined and documented in terms of how healthy the user was. Personally, I think this takes the phrase, "I give you my heart," a little too far. Do you think this is creepy or romantic? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Vampires of Zozopol. In 2012, archaeologists were excavating an old monastery near the seaside town of Zozopol in Bulgaria. It was here they unearthed the remains of 2 men. Upon testing, they discovered the men were about 700 years old, and both of them had been stabbed in the heart with iron rods. Centuries ago, it was quite common to believe in vampires. Remember all those crazy witch hunts? Yeah, well, they were pretty superstitious back then. It was also pretty common to stab someone in the heart you believed was a vampire so that they couldn't come back to life and find you and suck your blood. Apparently, Bulgaria was a pretty hot spot for these vampires to live. Over the last few decades, about 100 of these bloodsuckers have been found, dating back to the 1st century AD, meaning about 100 skeletal bodies have been found that people really believed were vampires. Researchers aren't sure what any of these people did to deserve a stake through their hearts, but they definitely weren't coming back. So what does this prove, other than people will do crazy things to try and stay safe? Simple. That in those times, people would do anything and everything to try and put down what they fear, and that fear would continue on for hundreds of years to come. Number 5. The First Leper. There have been many illnesses and afflictions throughout history that have seriously hindered or even eradicated races of people or even just the human race as a whole. One such example is leprosy. The disease is ancient, and yet it's very misunderstood in terms of what it can do and how contagious it is. Even though we've been able to fight this disease off with modern medicine, we honestly don't know that much about it in the overarching sense. That's mainly because the bacteria that causes it is difficult to culture for research and has only one other animal host, the 9-banded armadillo. But getting to the creepy part, it's believed that a set of bones from India is the first ever case of leprosy, or at the very least, the oldest found case of it in terms of the bones showing clear signs of it. The catch? These bones are 4,000 years old. The skeleton was buried around 2000 BC in Rajasthan, India, at the site of Balathal. This is significant because burials in India don't happen that often unless it's a special case, like being unfit to be cremated. As you might recall, due to the fear of leprosy, anyone who was found to have contracted it was cast out by all. And so to find out just how old the disease is and how it would mutate the body's look both then and now is a creepy sight indeed. Number 4. Gloom Ballet Man. Easily one of the creepiest finds you can ever discover is that of finding a body in a place you wouldn't expect, like a peat bog. Granted, there are a lot of bodies that are found there, but the reasoning is often different depending on the place you find it. Enter the Gloom Ballet Man. This was a body that was uncovered in 1952 from a peat bog near the village of Grauballi in Jutland, Denmark, hence the name. But why is this particular one so creepy? Simple, because while peat bogs are known to preserve bodies in rather impressive ways, this body was preserved almost too well. His hair, for example, was not only perfectly preserved, but it also kept its color. This is crazy, given that this man died in the 3rd century BC after having his throat slit. So, does that mean he was sacrificed? Yes, it's believed that in a form of paganism, he was sacrificed to try and ensure a better harvest, a sad but common practice in those times. If you want further proof of just how creepily preserved this man's body was, despite being in the ground for over 2,000 years, his fingerprints could still be taken, and they were by the museum that he was housed in. Number 3. The Tale of Yan Qiwei. Sometimes the creepiest element of a discovery isn't the discovery itself, but the story behind it. In 2015, a 1,300-year-old tomb discovered in Sichuan, China, held not just the bones of a man and his family, but the story about how they all died. And it's quite a tale. The man in question was Yan Qiwei, who, through a series of very fortuitous events, helped bring the first female emperor of China to power, Wu Zetian. She grew to admire Yan and made him not just a general, but a very high-ranking person in her court. He was eternally loyal to her, including breaking his own arm at one point in refusal of joining a rebellion against her. So, as you can see, that's a pretty good guy, and someone you would absolutely want in your royal court. The problem? He had a brother who wasn't as loyal. The brother turned against the empress, and so he was killed, as was Yan and his family. Due to guilt by association for the crime of his brother, Ziwei, he, Yan Qiwei, was executed under collective punishment, the epitaphs say, adding that the entire family suffered collective punishment and were all executed. Not just executed, but buried carelessly. However, he was eventually exonerated and was put in his rightful resting place. Still, it's kind of creepy and horrifying to hear that a man that was so loyal and deserving of praise was punished because of the actions of his family. Number 2. The Heslington Brain. It's a well-known fact that as you die, certain parts of your body dissolve, leaving only your bones for the longest of time. You know, unless you try and preserve a part of you in a special way. However, sometimes a rather creepy find is waiting in certain bones, like the human brain. This was found in 2008, where a man's body was discovered within a clay pit. Inside the man's skull was his brain. Now, again, depending on the age of the body, it makes sense that the brain could be in there. But this particular brain was 2,600 years old, long after it should have been nothing but dust. Instead, it was perfectly preserved, and the Heslington Brain, as it's now known due to where it was found, is both a creepy treasure and an odd mystery. It belonged to a man in his 30s who was hanged and then decapitated. It's not the oldest brain ever found, but it is the brain in the best condition from ancient times. It was even described as having a tofu-like texture. Ugh. No one is even sure how this brain lasted this long, but it's believed that some acidic fluid or substance stopped the brain from weathering away. But what that force was remains a mystery. Number 1. Headon Stakes. There are many gruesome images that have been burned into the minds of people with historical images and, of course, television and movies. One of them is people's heads and bodies being put on pikes, spikes, or stakes. But in Sweden, a dig site revealed what might have been the very first case of that ever happening. This was found at the Metallastrom River, where 10 skulls were found on stakes. 9 of them were adults, while the last one was an infant. As they found them, they could very easily tell that they were intentionally put on the stakes because of the fact that they were put upon a stack of stones. It likely means that they were being prominently shown for all to see, whether it be as part of a warning or as a trophy of certain exploits. There was even proof that there were more skulls mounted at one time based on the bits and rubble around the site. While a creepy and gruesome sight, no doubt, the question remains that of why. What made them do this? Was it for self-pleasure? Was it for a god? Or something else that we don't know? It's doubtful we'll ever find the truth. These bones have been traced back over 8,000 years, and you can very well say that this was a tradition that lasted a long time. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these creepy archaeological discoveries? Which one would freak you out the most? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these. See you next time. Bye.